Now we want to create two more models for our project. We need to store the order header and order details. So inside our models project, we will add a new class file. And first will be order header. We will make this a public class, and what should be all the properties? First one will be the ID. That will be the primary key of the table. I will use the key data annotation just to be explicit. Then for any order that is being placed, we need to know which user placed that order. So we will have a required property which is user ID, and that will be string. That's how we have the user ID set up in our ASP.NET users table. We need to add a navigation property, so we will use foreign key on user ID, and we will have application user. Let me add validate never on the validation property. We will need to record when the order was placed, so we will have a required date time for order date. Next property that we want is the order total. Let me add 3 data annotations for the order total. We will have the display format to be currency. That way it automatically formats that, and we will have a display name with a space between order total. I will also make that a required field. After that, we will have to know the pickup date and time when a user wants to pick up their order. So we will have a pickup time here with the display name. That will be of date time. Now with new version of C#, there is a property for time only and date only. But with Entity Framework Core, we do not have that. So we have to use date time for the pickup time. We will also have to create a new date time for the pickup date. But when we use pickup date, we do not want to map that to the database. What we will do is on pickup time, we will append the same date and map everything before we place the order. So inside database, there will only be 2 dates. One will be the order date time, and the next one will be the pickup time, which will also have the date when that order is supposed to be picked up. Next is one of the most important fields that comes with any order, and that is the order status. We need to know what will be the different order status in our application and manage everything accordingly. We also have some comments, so let me add a nullable string here, which will be comments. We will have payments with our order, so it makes sense to store a transaction ID that we will get from Stripe once the payment is successful. That way we have a transaction ID to follow up if something goes wrong. Last but not the least, inside order header, we should have the pickup name and the phone number of the person that is picking up the order. So these are all the details that we want in our order header. Now what exactly are the products that are there in one particular order will be the responsibility inside order details. So since our order header looks good, let's continue with order details from the next video. Next model that we want to create is the order details. So let me add a new class file, and that will be order details. This will be a public class, and we will need an ID for the order details as well. Then we need a mapping between order header and order details. So inside order details, we will always have an order header ID. That way we can map both the tables. So here we will do prop, we will add integer of the order ID, which will be the order header ID. So we need a navigation property as well. We will say order header, and let's add a foreign key attribute. We will use the data annotation. We will add the using statement, and the ID will be order ID. Let me also say validate never, because we do not want to validate the order header when we are working with order details. So that looks good for our order header. Now for each of the order details, we will also require what is the menu item ID and what is the count for that menu item that is needed. So we will add a required property for the menu item ID. Let me also make it required for the order ID. So both order ID and menu item ID are required. Lastly, what we want is the count. But then if you think about that, whenever you want to display name of the menu item, you will have to populate the navigation property and retrieve name. Sometimes it is possible that you would have updated the name. One thing that is more concerned in this scenario is price instead of the name. Let's say when a user places an order, the price of the item is $10. But at that same time, you are increasing the price to $12. If we want to see what was the price when user placed the order, we will not have that if we are dependent on menu item. So it makes sense to store some critical information inside the order details, like price of the item, and we can also save the name of the item. Description is not something that is that critical with the order, so we can go to menu item if we ever need the description. But price is a sensitive topic. When a user places an order, we want that exact price. And with that, our order details looks good. Now that the models are added, let's continue in the next video. It's time for an assignment. We have added the order header and order details model. I want you guys to add order header and order details table to the database, and after that you should configure the order header and order details repository and unit of work. Inside both the repositories, you can implement the generic update method as well. So good luck with the assignment, and let me show you how to do that in the next video. Let's implement our assignment with order header and order details. We will switch back to the solution here, and I will open up the data access project. First, we need to add a DB set inside the application DB context. We will have to add two copies. One will be order header and other one will be the order details. We will call that as order header and order detail. I am using details here because for one header there will be multiple details, but if you want to follow the singular approach that we have, you can change the class name to order detail, and the table name also you can keep that as order detail. We will just keep that as order details right here. We need to add migration next, so let's do that. I'll call this add order header and detail to DB. And perfect, our migration is added here. You can examine we have the foreign key to ASP.NET users for order header, and in order details we will have the foreign key of menu item and the order header ID. That is perfect. Let's update the database and push these changes to our SQL database. Perfect. So with that, our database is configured. The next thing that we have in our assignment is to configure the order header and details repository. So let's go back here inside the repository. Let me copy the category repository, paste that 2 more times. We will change the name here to iOrderHeader repository and iOrderDetail repository. Let's also change those class files or interface. This is the detail repository. So this will be on order details, and we have the order details which we will update. This looks good for the detail repository. Let's modify the same thing in order header. Perfect, so header and detail looks good. Let's copy the implementation of category repository and paste that 2 more times. We will be changing the name here. We can copy the iOrderDetail, paste it here for order detail repository, order header. Let me copy the interface name and I will paste that here. remove the I. Let's do an F2 here, copy the order header repository, paste it, make sure you're working inside order header here, and we'll make all the changes to correspond with the order header repository. When we want to update, we will say _db.orderHeader based on the obj.id, and we can just update everything right here. Once we retrieve the obj from db, then we used to modify each and every property. But we have one way of updating all the properties, and that is using _db dot we have order header. On there we have the update, and we can directly pass the obj that needs to be updated. What this will do is it will modify all the properties inside the existing order header based on the ID and do the update automatically. So we can use the same approach inside the order detail repository as well. Let's go there. We have the order detail repository. Let me copy the name, and we will modify everything with order detail. We will do the same thing for update here. We can say _db.orderDetails.update. We pass our obj. So with this, our repository looks good for order header and order detail. The last thing that is remaining here is to configure our unit of work. So let me do that. We will add both the interface inside the iUnit of work, and let me actually go back. I will copy these two lines, paste them inside unit of work. We will have the private setter here. We'll configure the order detail and header inside the constructor. Let me just add the public accessor, and this looks good. So with that, we have done all the configuration for order header and detail repository inside our project. We need to get back to the summary view that we were working on. Let me run the project here and examine that so that we can refresh ourselves. We are already logged in. If we go to our shopping cart, we have multiple items, and if we go on summary here, we need to display all of the items inside our shopping cart. So we need to have a property that will hold the list of all the shopping cart that we have. On top of that, if you see on the left hand side where we have the pickup details, these are all the properties that we have inside the order header. So we can create an object of order header, bind all the details to that object, and on the left hand side we will need a list of all the shopping cart items. In order to get all the shopping cart items, it will be similar to the shopping cart get method. So let's do that first thing. Inside cart, we have our index. Let me open the code behind and summary as well. Let's go to our index here, and let me copy everything that we have till the get handler. We will close this and paste it right here. We will remove the other get handler for now. The summary page will only be accessible for authorized user, so let me add that first thing. We need an IEnumerable of shopping cart. Let's add all the using statement. Now, as I said before, with shopping cart, we will require the order header. Inside order header, we have a property for cart total. Let me show that. That is right here. Because of that, we can ignore this cart total now. We will just use that from the next property, which is order header. We need the iUnit of work for all the database related changes, and let me change the constructor to summary model. Then what should we do inside our get handler? We will need the user ID of the logged in user, so let's add the using statement for claims here, and then we need to calculate the cart total. This cart total will be inside order header that we have. So what we can do is inside the constructor, we can say order header is equal to new order header. Then right here, we will be able to use order header dot we have the order total. That will store the total that we have in our shopping cart. Outside the for each loop, inside order header, we have pickup name and phone number. We should default that to the name and phone number we have on the profile, and then user can change it if they want. So how can we retrieve application user using our unit of work? We have not added any repository for our application user, so we will have to first implement the interface. Let me copy the category repository here, and I will create application user repository. Let's copy that interface and modify things. This will be on the model of application user. We do not want to implement any methods in there. It will be pretty simple. Let me copy the category repository, paste that for application user repository. Copy that class name, and we will modify the details here for application user. We do not have any update method, so let me remove that, and it is much cleaner. Looks good. Let me close that. We will modify the unit of work. Let's copy this and paste that in unit of work as well. We will have the public keyword, and we will have the private set. We will just say application user is equal to new application user repository. Looks good. Let me save everything. Go back to our summary page model. So now we can retrieve the application user here. From unit of work.application user, we have the getFirst.default, and we want to retrieve that based on the user ID that we have inside claim.value. We can say u goes to u.id is equal to claim.value. Once we retrieve that, we can populate the order header dot pickup name. This will be application user dot first name, plus we can add a space here, and we can add application user dot last name. Next, we have the phone number that we can retrieve from the application user. Once all of this is done, we will go back to the page and we will load all the data. So this is great. With that, our models have been populated for order header as well as list of shopping cart. In the next video, let's modify the UI and see all the changes. Now the summary page model looks good. Let me open up the summary UI and let's modify the details. We have a form here that we will be posting. In there, we have order summary, and we need a link to go back to the shopping cart. Shopping cart is inside same folder as summary, so we can directly say ASP page is equal to index. If we scroll down, we have the name that is being displayed, and we have the input button. We can use ASP for tag helper, and we will bind that to order header dot pickup name. Let me copy this and paste it one more time here. The next one is for phone number. We will access that in the order header. After that, we have the pickup date and time. We have two different properties that are available for date and time. When the type is date, we can use the ASP for here. This will be inside order header dot pickup date, and the type is date. We can copy this and paste it for time here. This time the ASP4 will be pickup time. We will scroll down. We have a text area here. We can use ASP4 tag helper, and we have order header dot comments. Then let me run the application and see the changes that we have done so far. Let's go to our cart. We will have to log in here. And let me add a few more items to the shopping cart here. I will also change the default count to be 1 rather than 0. But perfect, we have 3 items. That looks good. Let's go to summary. We have the pickup date and time populated. Let me remove that. We will go back and we will just add a value of empty in both the places. Let's go back and refresh, and perfect. Looks better. Next, we want to display order summary for all the items in our shopping cart. So we will have to implement a for each loop and iterate through all the items. We have order summary here, and then we have a UL and li elements. What we want to repeat in a for each loop is this li element where we display name, quantity, and price. So right here we will have a for each loop, and we will say variable detail in model.shoppingCartList. So for all of those items, we want to display few things right here. Name will be inside detail.menuitem.name. Count will directly be inside detail.count. And for price, we will again have to go inside the menu item. So we will say detail.menuitem.price, multiply that by the count, which is detail.count. Once we multiply that, that will be the final order total, so we can display that. Let me save this, go back and refresh, and see the change. I want to multiply and display the final total here, so the @ sign will be before the bracket like that. And perfect. We just need the order total. That is inside model.orderHeader. We populated the total. Let's refresh, and perfect. Everything is much cleaner. Now if someone tries to place order, we want to add some client-side validations right here. You can use Sweet Alert if you want, but we have built-in validations with the span tag, so let's use that. Let me stop the application here. And at the bottom here, we will add a section of scripts, and we will include our validation scripts partial. Then we need to add validations. So inside the pickup name, we will add a span. We have ASP validation for. This will be order header.pickup name. We will also give that a bootstrap class of text danger. Let me copy this span and paste it one more time. This one is for phone number. Then we have pickup date and pickup time. We just want to make sure that inside order header, if we go there, pickup time, date is required. Let me also add the required properties for name and phone number. Perfect. That looks good. Let me save everything and run the application one more time. We will go to our shopping cart, summary, and hit the place order. As soon as we hit that, we get the validations are not successful. We need to fix that. So with this, our summary view is looking great. Next thing that we have to do is when we hit the place order button, we need to create the order header and details in the database. Now you might be thinking, what about payment? Payment comes after the order is created in database. So what happens is we will create an order with the status of pending, and then we will redirect to stripe.com to collect payment. Once the payment is collected, we will come back to the application and we will update the status of order to submitted. That will be the flow that we will follow with Stripe payments. So let's do that in the next video. Inside our summary page, when the user hits place order, we want to actually create an order inside the order header and order details. The button has a type of submit and it is inside the form tag, so we can use the details that are posted. Let's do that inside the page model. Let me copy what we have for the get handler and paste it one more time. We are using the default handler, so we will call this as onPost. Now inside the onPost, we first need to get the ID of the logged in user. Based on that, we want to load the shopping cart again. We can use the shopping cart that is being posted, but it is good to reload that so that we get the fresh data from database. We will calculate the order header again, but we do not want any details for application user right now. Inside order header, we have the status that we want to set as pending. So rather than having magic strings here, we have a constant inside the utility project static details. Now in here we will have multiple status of our order. So we will have to create about 8 constants. Let me walk you through all the status that we will have. Once the order is placed, it will be inside status pending, which will basically mean pending payment. Once the payment is successful from Stripe, we will change the status to status submitted, which will have a string value of submitted underscore payment approved. Now if while processing the payment, if card is declined or something, we will change the status to status rejected. So these are all the payment related status. Once the payment is done, it will be inside status submitted. After that, when a chef starts to cook the order, they will change the status to in process. Once the food is ready, it will be updated to ready for pickup. Once the order is picked up, we will change that to completed. And then if for any reason we have to cancel the order, we have status cancelled, and if we refund the order, that will be status refunded. So you can see we have quite a few status that will toggle our order header. By default, the first status when it is created is inside static details. We'll press Ctrl dot for utility. We have the status pending. We will also populate the order header dot order date as today's date time. So we'll say datetime dot now. Then inside order header, we have the user ID field, and that user ID is claim.value. Finally, we need to calculate the order header dot pickup time. The pickup date is not inside database, only pickup time is there, where we will have to combine the date from pickup date and time from the pickup time. So we will say convert here. We'll do control dot for the using statement. Dot, we have the to date time. We will convert the order header dot pickup date, and we just want the to short date string. Then after that we will add a plus sign, add a space there, and we will append the pickup time. Pickup time is inside order header dot pickup time. This time we will say to short time string. That will have the finalized pickup time with both date as well as time. Once we do all of that, our order header is good to be added. So we will say unit of work dot order header dot add, and we will add order header to the database. After we add order header, we need to add the order details for all of the items in our shopping cart. But when we add order detail, we need the order header ID. So we will have to save the changes. Once we call the save method, order header will be created, and then order header will automatically have the ID populated with the ID that was created inside the database. So with this, the order header is added to the database. Now we need to work on adding the order details. Let me do that in the next video. Once the order header has been added, we need to create order detail for all the properties inside shopping cart for that user. So we need to iterate through all of the items. So variable item in the shopping cart list that we have. For each one of these items, we will have to create an order detail, and we will have to add that to the database. So we will create an order details object. Let's call that order details is equal to new. And the first detail we want to populate is menu item ID. That will be inside item.menu item. That is populated. We will have the ID inside there. You can retrieve the ID from menu item.id, or we directly have the menu item ID. Both of them will be populated. Next we have is the order ID, which is the order header ID. So that will be populated inside order header dot ID because we are creating order header on line 63. So after that the ID will be populated. Then we have the name that we need to populate, that is inside item.menu_item.name. We have price, which is inside item.menu_item.price. And finally, we have count, that is inside item.count. Those are all the details that we want for the order detail. And this will be done for each item that we have in our shopping cart. So once the order detail is populated, we can call unitofwork.orderDetail.add, and we will add that to the database. So we will do that for each item, and we will save the changes. Once we have created the order header and order details, it makes sense to clear the shopping cart. So we can say _unitofwork.shoppingcart.remove range. That will remove an IEnumerable of shopping cart that we have inside the shopping cart list. We can remove that because we have already created an order based on this shopping cart. So once the order is placed, it makes sense to delete them. So after that, we will call the save method, and that looks good. So we have done quite a few things inside the onPost. Let me add a debugging point here and show you what happens. Let me add a debugging point here and run the application, because even though we have done quite a few things, there are some errors that I have left for you in the code. Let me show those scenarios. Let me go back and remove the debugging point, and let me just try to place an order to show you some of the errors. So our summary looks good. Let me enter a date and some random time here and hit place order. As soon as you hit place order, you should see some exception. The exception that we see is cannot insert null into the phone number. Now I want you guys to pause this video and find out what exactly is happening here. Why is the phone number null? Because if you go back, that is populated as 123. I hope you guys were able to figure that out. We added all the models inside the page handler. Right here we have order header and we have the shopping cart list. But did we bind these properties? We forgot to bind them, because of which when the page is posted here on the post handler, we will not get any of the properties. I have been binding them so far, but in this video I intentionally did not bind them so that you know the importance of that attribute. I hope you were able to figure out this error by yourself. When you add bind properties, let's run our application one more time. This time I will introduce the debugging point because now the values will be populated. We will see if all the values are the correct values and what gets created. So let's go to our shopping cart here, summary, and we'll populate this again. Place order. Our shopping cart will be populated. It has 3 items. That is perfect. Let me add a debugging point and continue. Initial status will be pending. Value has the user ID. We have pickup time. Let's see what that is. We have 9:23 and 2:47 p.m. If we go back, that is exactly what we added. So the pickup time is getting configured with both date as well as time. We add our order header and here we save the changes. So now if we go back to SQL Server, order header will be present there. Let me refresh all the tables that we have and examine the order header. Perfect, the first order header got added with an ID of 2. If we go back and examine this order header, you will notice that the ID is automatically populated, so we will be using this ID when we create the order detail. Let's press F10 here and let's create the order details. It will be executed 3 times. that is perfect. Then we want to remove all the shopping cart. That's done, and we save the changes. Let's continue. So we are here on the same page, but if you reload this page, there won't be any shopping cart items because the order has already been placed. So if we do select top 1000 on order details, perfect. We have the count, menu item ID, order header ID, and the price and name. So everything is working as expected. Our shopping cart should be empty now for the user ID that we were working on. This is a different user ID, so it will be populated for that. But if you click on cart here, it displays please add items to the shopping cart. So perfect, we have created our order, but we do not have anything related to payment. Before we work on payment, let me show you some wrong code that we have added and how to improve that in the next video. Now, even though everything is technically working, we have some flaws in the existing code that we have. If you scroll down, where we have the for each loop, you can see inside the for each loop, we are saving the order detail every time. So if there are 4 items in the shopping cart, we will call our database 4 times. If we remove this save from here and we save the changes right here, then also everything will still work. But this time all the order details will be added in a single database call, which is on line 81. So that way we are saving some database calls that were not necessary. Now the save method that we have here is required because we need to save order header to get the correct ID to populate in order details. So this is by intention we are saving 2 times. But the one that was inside for each loop, that was not required. So these are small things that you should always take care of so that you do not do unnecessary database calls when it comes to Entity Framework Core. So with that one small change, let's see how we can integrate Stripe payments to our project.